Now we can begin. Our very first topic for this course, it's aptly called an overview of technology management. And here we will be talking about themes and ideas. Uh, we're not gonna do any deep dive in any specific area yet. We should be doing that in the succeeding sessions. But I think it's good that we go have a general feel of what technology is about. And I hope that this session would allow you and allow everybody else to appreciate it in its entirety. Okay. So, here's what to expect in this very short lecture or commentary. First, we'll talk about the scholarly treatment of management. How is management studied, or how is management examined as a discipline, as an academic field? Okay, so that's the first thing that we will talk about. Secondly, we will talk about technology management now as a specific discipline. Okay, what is technology management all about? And how does one tackle in starting to study technology management? And the last item for this session, we will be talking about some themes in technology management, which would be a preview of the modules and the sessions that everybody else, you will be exploring as we go through this course. Now, let's go with the scholarly treatment of management. Well, generally, in the history of management thinking, typically we can look at management as an art. Okay? And by art, we talk about crafts, we talk about skills, uh, and in this area, as an art, mastery or becoming an art expert, if you will, requires constant application of those crafts and skills. And it's important that we would want to keep on doing this. So it's really through repetition that one becomes a master or an expert in those crafts or skills. Okay? And as an art, there's emphasis on human ingenuity. And what do we mean by this? We mean that it's really more about uh, not through some procedure or recipe where one achieves perfection, but in some cases, you will notice that all the basic elements are perhaps available to you. Okay, the practices, the skills, crafts, but it is only in the application where you get value from those crafts and skills. And oftentimes, people will understand, okay, certain things are done in certain ways. If other people would do it, then they would probably get the same thing. But sometimes that's not usually the case. It's not through a strict implementation or a strict following of a recipe that you actually gain the outcome, but it's really more of having a holistic understanding of the situation and then looking at what crafts and skills would be applicable in those situations. So that's where art comes into the picture, and that's how management can be seen as an art. If you think about it, leaders or managers, um, when they lead, when they manage, they don't really have like a cookbook with them all the time. They don't have like a recipe card or a cheat sheet that they refer to all the time. And then they apply what is said in that cheat sheet, and then the output will happen as expected. That's not the case in management. There could be some stability of outcomes, Meaning, if I do certain things in the same way, uh, majority of the time, maybe higher, 80%, 90% of the time, I'd get the same result. But it's never 100%. Okay? And the outcome can be arrived at in many ways also. So there is no singular way of coming up with the outcome that you want. That outcome can be achieved through different means. So that's where management as an art comes into the picture. It's it's not a black and white thing. In fact, a lot of the managers and leaders are taught that they need to be comfortable with the gray areas. Okay? And sometimes things tend to be more gray than usual, but it's not just a black and white thing. Now, of course, there are some areas that it's really black and white, but definitely there are things that are not black and white, and we just have to allow for the possibility that they will be gray. Now, but we can also look at management as a science. Okay, in fact, there's a discipline called management sciences, and it highlights the fact that management can be treated scientifically. And what do we mean by management as a science? Where here, management also deals with empirical data. It deals with facts. Okay, and that's true. Of course, every decision would have to be based from data. Would have to be based from facts. And we're seeing a trend right now wherein a lot of people put unusual focus on data. So you have data science, data analytics, and they're really there to aid management, okay, as a science, okay? So you also deal with empirical data. Now, another element why management can be treated as a science is because there's a certain level of repeatability or reusability. And if it can be shown that things, practices are repeatable or reusable, they actually lead to reliability, to predictability. And this is something that we've alluded to just a while ago that certain things, I mean, even if you do certain things 90% of the time, it would probably give you the same result. Okay, that's good. Okay. But at the same time, we are also conscious of the fact that the 10% can happen. So, but nevertheless, I mean, if your batting average is 90%, then okay, 90%, it's good enough. Okay, you can run with it. Okay, it's better than chance, as they say. And if there's demonstrated repeatability or reusability, then reliability gets to be established uh, or ascertained. Okay, and that's what makes it as a science. What makes management as a science, because now that there's certain level of predictability or reliability, then it can be said, of course, with a certain bit of caution, that certain practices X, Y, or Z, okay, I will that will lead to outcomes ABC. Okay. And management as a science, the reason why it can be seen as a science because it deals with a certain rigor in structure and order. Um it's not fluid, it's not too ad hoc, as we would say. There's a certain level of order, there's a certain level of discipline in it. And it's clean, it's clear. And we see this in a lot of the tools made available to us. Okay, we see a lot of methods used by management. Okay, and these tools, these methods, they actually reflect the fact that management has to be structured and well ordered. And as such, management can be seen as something of a science as well. Now, you ask me which is the more correct view, management as an art or management as a science? Well, it's not either or. In this case, we have to appreciate that management is both an art and a science. And if you're somebody who's actually doing management as a profession, then you have to accept the fact that it is an art. Okay. It requires constant application of skills, crafts, okay, learning from other people, trying to be creative in many ways. And at the same time, it is also a science. You deal with data, you deal with predictability, you deal with order, okay, you deal with processes. So if you want to do or have a career in management, well, you have to appreciate that it has to be an art and a science. Now, the question right now is that when we look at the subject of technology management, does that really mean or is that congruent with the idea of management of technology? Okay. You might be thinking this is just a play of words. You could probably argue, well, they're the same. What gives? I mean, I wouldn't really mind. They're equivalent. Okay, but I think it's good at this stage that we pause a little bit and do a little bit of reflection. Excuse me, do a little bit of reflection and and understand and appreciate that okay, it's not always going to be that case wherein uh, that these two terms, technology management and management of technology, are the same. Okay, they have similarities, but we'll show in a little bit on what we really mean by technology management. Okay, and my claim right now is that they're not mathematical equivalents, as I would probably say. They have similarities. Maybe they're going to be similar, maybe 99% of the time. But there's always going to be that 1% variation. And I'm going to talk about that variation in a while. Okay. Now, if we take a look at technology management, the first term, okay, that we shared earlier in our equation, if we look at it as a discipline, I'd like to invite you and everybody else with the idea that we have to look at this in three parts or in three perspectives. Okay, we have to look at it uh, with the view of the subject. We have to look at it with the view of the action or the act itself, what's really happening in technology management as a discipline, and we look at it in its object, okay, or who receives the action. Okay, so subject is usually the actor, object is the receiver of the action. Okay, so the simple semantics, if you may. But let's start with the object first, because that's usually the easier thing to appreciate. And this is how people tend to view technology management as a discipline, looking at the object and unfortunately looking at the object alone. Okay, let's start with the object. Well, what is the object of technology management? Well, the object of technology management would be technology, but it's not only limited to technology. It can also be the stakeholders of technology as recipients of that action. Okay. Now, the danger here is that if we look at technology management simply from the object's point of view, there is what we call the danger of objectification. Okay, there's that excessive focus on the object. And if we only look at technology management as an object, which means technology per se, okay, there could be what I would call a disruption in the academic harmony of how we look technology management as a discipline. Okay. And it could also mean disruption in practice because now, as you know, the object is the one who receives the action. If we take a look at just the object itself, we might even ignore the actions being done on those objects. And because we've never had that appreciation to look according to these three lenses and just looking at object per se, then how technology management is practiced can be disrupted. Okay? There could be a perversion of how technology management is executed, and that's something that I'd warn everybody when we just simply look at technology management as that. Okay, and this is why uh, this is put to us as a basic tenet in technology management. Well, technology on its own is useless. If you look at technology as an object, okay, or the object of study, well, you will realize and somehow instinctively you understand and appreciate that the technology on its own is useless, right? So it would be very, very difficult for us to study technology management if we just look at the technology alone. It's never complete. Okay. So technology management is not just about technology or the management of technology. It's not just about that. Okay. So that's the first thing, or that's the first bold statement that I'd like you guys to keep in mind as you're going through this course on technology management. That it's not just about technology. Technology is not the number one topic or focus in technology management because we know on its own it's useless. Okay. So now let's look at another lens through the action. Okay. Now, when we look at technology management as a discipline, what happens in technology management? What do we do in technology management? Well, we're here. The action is really to study. Now we're here to study technology management. Okay? And what are the methods of study? So that's something that we will look into. So how do we study technology management? Well, we said earlier that management is both an art and a science. So as an art, how do you study art? Well, you look at patterns, you look at cases, you look at history, you look at artifacts. Okay. And the reason why you want to look at these things is because the purpose of studying art is context. You want to know the background. You want to know the rationale, okay, the reasons why these things happen. Okay, and then you take a peek into the soul of perhaps a historical community or a generation. Okay, that's art. So when we look at a painting, for example, we appreciate painting. Okay, we don't just simply look at a painting at its superficial sense, right? We look at the colors, you look at the material used. Was it painted in canvas or on wood? Okay, what was the material that used for the paint? Was it acrylic? Was it oil? I mean, well, that's part of the study, but it's more akin to the science. Okay, but as art, when you look at the art behind the painting, you look at, okay, what's the composition? Right? What's the subject of that painting? Okay, who painted it? Okay, and when was this painted? And why was this painted? Was this painting done for someone? Was it a commissioned painting? Or was it just simply as a work of art, an individual initiative of the painter? So we look at the context, okay, when we study things as an art. But as a science, what do we do when we have a discipline that's in the field of sciences? Well, we deal with hypotheses, we deal with experiments, we deal with controls. And the reason why we do these things in sciences is that the purpose is for us to be able to come up with predictable outcomes. We want to be able to structure something so that if I do a certain input, then the output will come out 100% of the time, or at least statistically speaking, all the time. Okay? But we know that just like in everything else, okay, there's variation, there's that element of luck, as we sometimes say. But nevertheless, the discipline, the methods used, we want to be able to come up with predictable outcomes. So technology management as a discipline, when we look at it as an art and as a science, we want to look at it because we want to know the context, okay, of what's managed or who manages it. We look at the context. But we also want to come up with predictable outcomes. Okay? We want to be able to confidently say that if these are the input parameters, the output will be this. Okay. And the reason why we want to come up with predictable outcomes is that we can also prepare ourselves for the future. Number one, we can also prepare ourselves for other circumstances in perhaps in different parts of society or in different countries. What might work, let's say, in the US, might work, let's say, in France, okay, or might work in UAE, or what might work in Hong Kong. Okay, that's how we look at the reasons why we want to have predictable outcomes also in our studies. But definitely, technology management as a discipline, the action is really to study. okay, to study it. And the point here is really the methods of study. When we look at technology management, the methods of study are varied, they're diverse, they're broad. And it would be a mistake just to limit ourselves to one type of method while ignoring the rest. That would be, for all intents and purposes, still a valid method to use. Okay. So understand that when you go through a lot of the papers, a lot of the topics, chapters, books on technology management, you will notice that their style really varies. Some of them can be very scientific, they're very heavy on frameworks. A lot would be storytelling, mostly capturing some history of an organization, heavy on interviews, or what we might call ethnographic methods. Okay, there's a lot of techniques. Okay, so there's no one single correct way of doing it. All of them would be correct. All of them would be useful. And that's something that we also have to keep in mind, that when we're studying technology management, it is important that we appreciate all the methods available to us. So what is being studied? Okay, now that's the idea. Okay, what's being studied? Okay, so what's being studied? And this is where we go to this schema or schematic. Okay, we're here. What we're studying? Okay, how to make technology useful. Okay, so at least that's our idea there, because technology on its own is useless. So now we're embarking on studying technology management because we want to study how to make technology useful. Now, if you see this schematic, okay, we have the object pinned down, how to make technology useful. We have our action, okay. Well, of course, to study technology management. Now we're missing the subject, the actor, the protagonist, okay. Who's that protagonist? The subject, okay, the doer of the action. Well, that would be you and me. And curiously, it's not just limited to a specific profession, to a specific specialist. Okay, I would even say everyone needs to study technology management. Okay, academicians definitely. People like myself in the academic institutions, well, of course, we are studying technology management. Researchers, okay, but even you as industry practitioners, you should also study technology management. But I would dare say to go even beyond that. The ones who need to study technology management are those who have a stake, okay, in making technology useful. Who has a stake in making technology useful? Practically everyone. Households, parents, okay, people you see walking down by the street, okay, people those in what we call blue collar jobs, okay, even non-profit organizations, even those who don't use technology to make a buck, no, for from a profit standpoint. Okay, even those charitable institutions. Okay, they also need to know technology management. Okay, so it is not just the purview or the ambit of the technologists or those in the industry. Okay, naturally, all of us in this session, we're all technology practitioners. So it makes sense to us as to study technology management. But really, it's more than us. It's not just you and me studying technology management. I would dare say that everybody needs to learn technology management. Now, we've already talked about the object, the action, which is to study, and the subject. And we said the subject would be everybody, human beings in particular. But I guess the question is, can technology be an agent of study? Can technology study how technology can be useful? So it's like reflexive, right? Like, for example, in philosophy, we study, philosophers study because they want to know wisdom, right? They want to achieve the highest pinnacle of wisdom. So it's reflexive, right? That's why you'd see philosophers. You sort of admire them, right? Because they're really in effect studying themselves and their profession, right? So because they really want to move higher in the field of learning in that sense. So in that manner, okay, can technology be an agent of study? Can they be someone or something, technology? Can they be the doers of the study? Okay. And this is the dilemma of artificial intelligence and machine learning, I would say. Well, of course, when we deal with machine learning, and for those of us who've done analytics, uh, in a way, they're bounded by their rules set by their creators, which would be human beings. So, but then, I mean, this is a philosophical question in a way, right? Like, is it possible for technology to study how to make technology useful? Right? You asked that question a few times. Can technology study how to make technology useful? Well, we know, well, we've seen, okay, in the field of artificial intelligence and machine learning, well, you can run a simulation many times, you can learn the rules, and eventually you know how to play the game. My favorite example would be how chess was studied, okay, uh, through the help of machine learning. It was possible for somebody or something like AlphaZero to learn the rules of chess and actually beat the best in chess. Okay? So, okay, but is that possible in the study of technology or the study of how to make technology useful? Okay. Well, in the case of chess, the rules are definite, right? Um, but can AlphaZero, okay, the Google technology that beat chess, okay, or the best chess players, can AlphaZero propose changes in the rules of chess? Is that even possible? Okay, well, for now, I can't give a definite answer. I mean, it could be possible. And this is very much reminiscent of what Isaac Asimov back in the 20th century, in the mid 20th century, had thought of how do you know if a robot has achieved human sentience? Okay, so there are three rules in iRobot. So if you've watched the movie by Will Smith, it's actually based on the novel, or I think it's just an essay, a short story rather, by Isaac Asimov. The three rules, okay, the three litmus tests of how to know whether a robot has human intelligence. Okay, um, but yeah, I mean, is that something that technology can do? Can technology study on how to make itself useful? Human beings, we can do that. We can study ourselves. Technology can be something for us to pause, and maybe in the future, I would think so, or maybe not. But in any case, I guess the bottom line here is that when we're studying technology management, okay, for now we're gonna deal with people as subjects. Okay, technology management would be useful for people. So in that sense, we can say that management is better left to the human beings than to the machines. Okay? Uh, and this would lead to a lot of implications. Like for example, in my case, I would be very skeptical if you do performance management in a purely systems standpoint. Like you leave everything to a machine or algorithm that will tell you whether that person is actually performing or not. From an evaluation point of view, that technique might be useful. You might see algorithms being used for that purpose, but it would be very limited. The algorithm will probably not tell you how to make that person improve, or how to, or what development areas that this employee should be taking on. Okay, that's where you as a human being would come in. That's where you insert yourselves, okay, into the picture, and that's where management comes in. Okay, so I would say that for now, I don't think managers will be anything other than human beings for the time being. So for technology management, well, technology can help, but certainly they're not going to be the protagonist. Not yet, anyway. I'm not sure if in my lifetime I will see that, in your lifetimes, but definitely technology will still need the services of the human person to be able to drive this forward. So there you have it. Okay, so technology management as a discipline. So who are the agents? Okay, who are the ones who are really studying technology management? Those have a stake. And what we're doing in technology management as a discipline, we're here to study. Okay, we're here to examine, and in study, we have to understand that it's supposed to be a safe space. Nobody is going to criticize you if you're studying. Okay, in that respect, because there's nothing to be judgmental about yet. Okay, we're here to study. We're here to look at data, come up with our own conclusions, debate healthily, if necessary. But we're here to study. And the reason why we're studying is because we want to know how to make technology useful. Okay, and obviously the uses can be quite varied. Now, everybody has a responsibility to study technology management. Okay, as I was saying a while ago, everybody, not just you, not just people in the IT profession, everybody. Uh, does that mean rigorous study? Does that mean that they have to attend this course, take the exam, submit papers? No, not in that respect, right? But when we say the responsibility to study technology management, well, we cannot just be dismissive and say, well, it's not my field. I'm not an expert there. Let somebody else take care of it. Oh, no. I mean, put the effort. Take the time to actually learn a little bit about technology management. Try to be updated with the latest trends or the latest happenings, okay, or developments in the area of technology and even in the area of management. Okay. And I guess this would be the first or one of the first things that I'd like to inculcate with everyone right now as far as values go. Okay, that idea that we cannot leave it to everybody else to do technology management for us. We have to do our part. We have to study it. We may not be the best, okay, uh, and even if we're not the best, we need to try our best still, uh, and really learn a little bit about technology management. So at the minimum, I'm hoping that after you're done with this course on technology management, you will have that eagerness, the desire to keep on studying technology management, even if we're done with the course. Now, what are the themes that we will talk about in technology management? And certainly, these themes can be blown up into separate courses themselves. But the objective right now is just to give a good picture, like a good map. Okay. And depending on your interests later on, some of you would probably would want to do a deeper dive into some of those themes. That's okay. But for our purposes, we'll just do a quick overview. Okay. And for this particular session, we'll do an overview of the overview, right? Okay. So we'll just do a bird's eye view of what to expect as far as the themes in technology management go. Okay. So first of all, patterns of technological change. Okay. Well, we know that technology changes and evolves. Okay. And each version of the technology is not identical to one another. So we examine, okay, we answer questions like when does technology change or how does it evolve? And who are the people involved in those changes? And what are the usual triggers for technology to change? Okay? How would we know whether a technology is obsolete? Okay. And when we talk about patterns, we will notice that uh, taken in their, I guess if we look at the common denominator of technology, you will notice that there are similarities as to their trajectory, their evolutionary trajectory. You'll notice, well, they seem to be very familiar. They seem to be similar. Okay. And you'll realize and appreciate that that is the general expectation for technological change. Okay, that there's going to be a pattern. Okay. Naturally, the pattern is not going to be very precise, but there's a pattern. Okay. So our job right now is to understand when will the next steps happen? When will the next phase of technological change happen? Okay, and that's going to be a topic that will be considered in technology management. Now, another theme would be technology acquisition. So there are two types of technology acquisition. You have internal acquisition, which is your typical research and development, R&D. So that's how you acquire technology, right? You try to learn how to do things, then you eventually develop the technology internally. That's how you acquire technology internally. But you can also acquire technology externally. It's not coming from you, but it's coming from outside. This is the realm of open innovation. And you will try to understand, okay, the difference between R&D and open innovation. We will try to understand the mix. Now, how much of your organization has to be R&D and how much of your organization has to be open innovation? And of course, part of it, we will examine impact to the environment. Okay, so this thing about sustainability, okay, we'll look into that as well. Okay, and does that affect our decision making mechanisms when it comes to trying to acquire or develop technology? Now, another theme in technology management is exploitation, technology exploitation. You might think that this is a negative term, exploitation, but really it's just another term for capitalizing technology. How do we utilize technology? Capitalize technology. Well, we can commercialize it, okay? And we can market that technology so that that technology can be extensively be used. Okay. And when we talk about exploitation, we talk about other topics like technology transfer. Okay. So somebody developed the technology. So who learns the technology? Okay. How do you actually get the knowledge of that technology? Okay. And technology utilization. So we try to find out how technology is utilized. Is it used? Is it not used often? Excuse me. What happens if they're not used often? And reverse innovation. So sometimes we start from a finished product, but from the finished product we try to understand how things work, and then we come up with our own way of doing things. So this is a theme in technology management: how technology is capitalized, how it's used, okay, how is it exploited, okay? Of course, for the gain of humanity, right? So we exploit technology. Now, another theme in technology management is identifying technology. How do we identify the appropriate technology for ourselves, for the organization we belong to? And this requires a little bit of planning, a little bit of foresight. Okay, some of you might have had a chance to consider, if you have a problem to solve in that particular organization. So, what would be the best technology for that situation? Okay, well, that involves a little bit of planning. That involves a little bit of anticipation of what to do. Okay. Now, another theme is learning about technology. How do people learn about technology? We'll talk about learning processes. We'll talk about the learning environment as to how technology is actually learned. Okay. And another theme here would be protecting technology. So, how does one protect the technology? And this is the realm of intellectual property. Now, why is it that we want to protect technology? Well, it's because we realize that there's a lot of effort and spending done to develop the technology. But how do we get the returns from that? Well, it's not easy. So, if you can imagine, let's say, space technology, that's quite expensive. Okay, it's certainly not something that's commercially available. Well, maybe in a few years' time, if you have the likes of Richard Branson or Jeff Bezos doing outer space stuff and then starting to sell seats to their own shuttles, okay, maybe eventually space technology can be commercialized. But until then, it's a very costly business. Okay? So, how do you try to recoup the expenses for that? What's the return? Will it be monetary or it will be something else? Nevertheless, how do you protect that? How do you make sure that that technology doesn't go into the wrong hands also? Okay. Technology on its own is useless, yes, but technology can be used for evil. Well, we know that. So, so how do we make sure that okay, it's not going to be used for evil? So those are the themes also that we'll explore in technology management. And then, well, this would be the last theme in a way, selection. How does one select the technology? So selection is different from identification because identification just tells you or there's an attempt to just anticipate, okay, this is what's going to happen as far as technology would go. Okay. And based on the parameters given to me, okay, so this is probably what we will need to do. But selection is on the side that okay, I have a problem. What do I use now? Okay. And more often than not, you will be having more than one option available to you. So which one is better? And chances are all of the options given to you would yield perhaps the same end result, or at least the end result that is to be expected. If it solves the problem, okay. Maybe all five options solve the same problem, but there could be some differences in other areas. So, how do you actually balance these things? How do you balance those options? How do you gravitate towards the option that is right for you? Okay. And we realize there's no one correct answer in every situation. Okay. So we will really try to unpack, okay, the different things when it comes to the choices or to the options that's made available to us. So with that, we end our session or the overview session of technology management.